The following is a transcript between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am, originally produced on March 4th, 2021, under the constellation of Pisces in the mental week, examining through the throat chakra. Me, and the dreamer in me awoke in his dream. I am, a deep dream, me, and in the depth he was lost. For the deeper he went, the more beauty he found. I am. The polarity of the first dimension extends to the high, while the wide, the second dimension, designs the patterns of a crucifix from which no one is exempt. The cross of time and space, which designs the imagination of existence in the resonant vibration of its echoes. And in them, in its consciousness, is lost in love with the waves that transform upon themselves towards the deep. Me, height, width, and depth, the sacred trinity that makes up the fundamental concepts of the third dimension, one we all know, experience, and live. I am. The most known to humans, for others live in their imaginations. Me, the imaginary? I am. To imagine comes from the Latin imago, which means portrait, that is, to create a figure within a limit, describing a reality in a figurative way. It is complicated to explain something objectively because, for example, try to say the first color that you see. Me, white on the screen. I am. Well, it is not white, but the conjunction of leads of different primary colors, whose combination produces the sensation of white, which in turn is nothing more than photons moving at high speed emitted in different frequency waves. That is to say, white is a mental construct, something figurative. Me, so nothing we see in the third dimension is real? I am, that's right. The third dimension is only the sensory experience of the imagination. Me, wow. This just blew my mind a little bit. As being the ego axis, this breaks my purpose a little bit, as my function is to be an anchor in this reality. I am. You are an anchor in all dimensions, as long as a reference point is needed. The third dimension has a reference point that we call depth. Me. Pro-depth equals to go deep. I am. To plunge into the options, into the abyss of the imagination, where lines and points, polarity, not only converge but diverge, where forces fold in on themselves, creating distortion. And that distortion creates beauty, for distorted sound creates notes, and notes create music. Distorted energy creates light, and light gives rise to colors. Distorted matter manifests diverse forms, and forms create realities capable of being felt. The senses, then, are the mechanisms of consciousness to receive the perceptions of the deep. You may not know it, but your brain is an illusionary illusionist. Me, what would that be like? I am. Do you remember what illusion means? Me, it comes from luso, which means game. Thus, illusion is the action of playing with someone. I am. The universe is like a child playing with reality. The brain, then, is designed to interpret that play, reading patterns and forming ideas or concepts through imagination. As we talked about yesterday, in the second dimension, the mind seeks to close an image, to finish it, and if it does not have all the data, it will simply close it with invented data. This makes the brain a processing machine, but also easy to fool. As in a magic trick, a musician does not perform magic in front of his expected audience, but removes from plain sight the patterns that the brain needs to follow to complete an image. Magic is the art of fooling the brain, not transforming matter. Me, sure, it's an act of illusionism. I am. You lose track of things and the brain starts playing with itself, creating the missing parts, creating an illusion. Thus, everything you see in the material reality is an illusion interpreted by the mind. The third dimension is not the dimension of matter. It is the dimension where you experience the depth of illusion, where the magician becomes public. Me. Oh, I understand. It is a level of consciousness where we go deep into what we have created to see it. Like the architect who drew the plans for the house and upon completion decides to enter it. Like the writer who reads his own book. The traveler who sets out on an adventure after planning his journey. I am. Thus the mind enters the third dimension. Me. Wait. You just showed me a rather strange image that I don't know how to describe. When you were talking about it going into the deep, the idea that I had of how this happened was a spirit in another dimension that comes floating into this world and somehow gets inside the body, like someone gets inside an astronaut suit or a sleeping bag. But what I just saw is very psychedelic and strange. I mean, what I saw was a network of lines and planes, like a kind of computer board with many circuits, although not physical, but conceptual, where the energy moved by polarity. And suddenly things began to curve, as if a force was pushing the flat space, creating the sensation of depth by doubling the space-time. And while doing so, everything was consumed on itself, folding inwards. And now only the external part was visible, which was no longer the network, but the cells that began to duplicate themselves, as if creating a body. In other words, it was the same reality, only folded. It was as if the pulses of the second dimension were formed on the third, but never ceased to be the other. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe the easiest way to understand it is like turning a sock inside out. I am. What a banal way to describe an interdimensional passage. But yes, I accept the simile. That is why the key to the third dimension is depth. And that is why the deeper that you go into the experience of this universal dimension, the more fascinated you will end up, living impressive realities until you turn your sock inside out. Me. And you come out in another dimension, like a wormhole, that instead of going through space like a road, it actually bends itself, going out into the new space without having moved from the same point. Like a fish eating itself, a sphere swallowing itself, and leaving out its inner side. I am. The third dimension invites us to see that the deeper we go, the more we transform ourselves, discovering all the facets, layers that constitute us. Going deeper in experience, in integration, is the key to this dimension. Every being that has planned its reality lives it manifested in this existence. From the physical, the emotional, and the mental, this dimension exerts pressure on existence, leading us to live everything we have projected. Me. It is the illusion that we ourselves have created to play, to test, to feel what we have projected from the origin. The third dimension is the path of the Alpha, looking for the Omega. I am. And the second dimension is the tool that the third dimension possesses in order to live itself. Me. This is why everyone has mapped out their own destiny in this reality, because from the second dimension are the ones who have created the patterns and blueprints that we have bent to live this reality today. Destiny is not a purpose, but a design of our own intention to exist. Thus, the third dimension is the miracle of the other dimensions. It is the fruit of the tree. I am. And here you have understood. Without time or space, the self intends to feel what it thinks, and the way to feel it is to live it. The universe designed the mental pathways to projection and perception that gave rise to feelings, so the feeling would manifest in the senses, and thus polarity could live in the form of matter. The mind launched into the depths of itself to discover its sensory capabilities, creating the real goal of existence, experimentation. Me, universal fruit. I am. It is here where the infinite becomes finite, where you discover the limits, where the unconditional becomes conditioned, where the grid becomes pattern. All with the intention of being able to see deeper, to feel deeper, to know from the depths. This is where the love that you knew as eternal energy begins to focus, to exist as emotional, limiting, bonding, and dependency factors. This is where the real king becomes real object. Royal of royalty comes from the Indo-European reg, which means right, line, law, straightness, axis. That is, it knows where it is going. It has a plan, just like the second dimension. But when it bends, becoming itself as a structure, the line becomes an object and is called thing, which in Latin is res, the origin of the word real. Me. Reality is the quality of being things. I am, and that is what the universe does. The great divine miracle is the capacity of the mind to constitute itself as things. Me. This is why I remember how happy we all felt when we are going to come the first time to the third dimensional world. At least for me, it was an enormous excitement, honor, greatness to feel that I was ready to do something unthinkable. I am, to live. Me, yes. I am. Although it may seem absurd to you, the dimension in which you live now is probably one of the most incredible from the cosmic point of view, because it is unthinkable what you are able to experience, to feel, to learn, to enjoy. The third dimension is one of the most beautiful and impressive facets of existence. Me, and it runs through the whole universe, I suppose. I am. Of course it does. Every star, every planet, every atom is located in the deep expression of the universe. Me. I like that you call the third dimension as deep expression. I am. That's what it is. It is a dream come true. Me. And now, at last, I understand that phrase better than ever, a dream come true. Ceases to be a poetic phrase and becomes something literal, an inevitable process. We are living our dreams, whether they are sweet or nightmares. I am. So now all that's left for you to do is to learn to daydream, and you can live the wonders. Me. And to do that, I must honor this dimension. I feel, in our quest to get to the fourth dimension above all, that we discredit the third. What happens when we move from one dimension to the other? Do we really have to go to the fifth dimension to leave the third? I am. First of all, leaving one dimension to live in another is like wanting to tear off the walls of the house and throw it away, because now I'd rather be sitting on the opposite wall. Me. Okay, I understand. I am. Secondly, let's understand this fifth dimension thing. In the 1960s, the peace and love movement that arose in the United States, seeking to stop the Vietnam War, popularized the idea of many of those who appealed to the New Age. Because people from the spiritual world were involved in these peace movements, the spiritual and astrological character began to be the way of interpreting the reality of the time. Thus, the arrival of the Aquarian Age, of the astrological convergences, and of the dimensions, coming from the Gnostic explanations of the cosmos, being popularized. All taking into account that this was a decade in which humans sought to conquer the stars and the moons and the heavens, which made everyone look toward the celestial vault. Since this famous decade in which young people built a utopian idea of a magical world in which the world would live in peace and harmony and unity, fleeing from the harsh three-dimensional reality of the Asian wars and the Cold War and its nuclear threats. The concept of a magical time of Aquarius was popularized, where we would all become one again, where spirituality, light, and consciousness would be life itself, attributes embodied by the fifth dimension. During all of these decades, then, the somewhat erroneous concept about the dimensions, smeared with the frustration with the chaotic life of this world, made most people on the way to awakening believe that we were going toward the fifth dimension, leaving behind the third. Me. So this is not so? I am. No, it is not. I'm sorry to say, but you will remain in the third as long as you do not know how the dimensions work. As we have said, they are the measurement of a house. For the fifth dimension to be our reality, then we must take the third to be lived as the fifth. To turn the sock upside down, to recognize that within the third are hidden the other dimensions. It is not by escaping, leaving, or running away, in the way that you pass from one dimension to the other, but by going deep into the dimension in which you find yourself and living it at all of its levels, making yourself responsible for it. Me. Until I know how to live the fullness of the third, I will not be able to feel the fifth nor the fourth, none. I am. A being can pass from one dimension to the other, but in order to do so, it is necessary that he resonates with that dimension in every particle of his being. Going to the fifth dimension and talking about the Aquarian Age in the 60s became the new symptoms of paradise and the arrival of the Savior. Therefore, if you want to live in the fifth dimension, you had better learn to live fully in the third. Me. Enjoy what we have created and find harmony in it. Be responsible for our own creation. I am. It is the limited love of the dimension that gives you the tools necessary to understand the creative power. The third dimension is the school of the cosmic mind. You are learning in the depths of illusion. Me. so I dare to live with illusion. I am play in life, that life is a dream, and dreams are.